Hi card making friends, welcome back. It's Sandy here. Thanks for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a couple of cards to share created with the Pinkfresh Studio's Cosmos Bunch stamp set, the coordinating die set, and the coordinating stencils. There are 5 stencils in this pack and we will be using them to add color to our stamped images for our cards today. I also have a couple of tricks up my sleeve concerning these stencils as well, so I hope you will join me for that. For the background, I'm playing with the Lush Vines hot foil plate, and I have 2 different backgrounds to share created with this plate. The first one is hot foiled, the second one is dry embossed. Finally, our sentiments for today's cards are hot foiled using the fancy script words foil plates and the coordinating dies. For the colors, for the first card, it's Blue Jay, Aquamarine, Ocean Breeze, and Lavender. And please excuse the marks on my hands. I have been doing a ton of gardening and we're building a deck, so I'm kind of scarred up. We're going to be stamping the image today in black ink onto Hammermill white cardstock. I'm using my Misti, and I also have my Misti Sticky Mat underneath there. These little sticky mats are awesome. There's 3 in a package, and they come like this, and then you just peel off the backing, and it's sticky on one side. And I have one face up in my Misti that my white cardstock is actually attached to. We're also going to be using it to hold our stencils in place for today's class. So get out some black ink and let's get our image stamped onto our white cardstock. And I stamped this a couple of times just to make sure that it's good and black. And now we're going to take this out of the Misti. Do not take it off that sticky mat. Number 1, we're going to be using it for the stencils. Number 2, just in case you want to stamp it again. As usual, I'm working on my white glass mat. This is from Glassboard Studios. It's magnetic, which is awesome because it's going to help hold all my work in place for me. So I've got my magnets holding my sticky mat on top of my glass mat, and now I am setting up my first stencil. And you see that I'm just pushing down on the edges of it and getting it stuck to the mat. I'm also using a couple of the magnets. We're going to start with the lavender ink, and I'm going to put a light layer onto the large flowers. And you'll see that I am stamping off the ink onto my glass mat before I stamp on or spread the ink on my image. And this stops you from getting that big blob right when you first put your blending brush down onto your surface. And you can reuse that ink, or you can do like I'm doing and just wipe it up and get ready to move on to the next stencil. Stencil number 2 is for the smaller flowers. We're going to jump ahead and do stencil 3 first. This is one of the tricks I wanted to share with you today. I'm using Sweet Mustard ink and these adorable small stencil brushes from Waffle Flowers. I have them linked in the description below for you. They come in a little sample pack of 4, or you can get a large pack of, I think it's either 10 or 12. Use the brush to add the yellow ink to the center of all of the little flowers. And because these brushes are so tiny, you don't have to worry about getting yellow anywhere onto your purple flowers. That's what I really love. You can get into these little nooks and crannies. Okay, so clean the stencil off and remove it. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to take some glossy accents, and I just zoomed in here so you can see close up. We're going to cover the flower centers with the glossy accents. Glossy accents take about 20 minutes to dry, so we're going to move on and work on the backgrounds and set this aside to dry so we don't mess it all up. So you want to spray your cardstock before you do your dry embossing, and you can dry emboss with all of these lovely hot foil plates. Simply cover them with this foamy mat and run them through your die cutting machine. This card has a frame around it, and I use the diagonal stitched rectangle dies to achieve this. The smaller of the dies and then the outside die cut on the inside and the outside creates that pretty white frame I'm going to be using on the card. I'm using 1/4 inch score tape on the back of my embossed image and just peeling off that protective paper on the back and adding the second strip around. I like using this when I have an embossed image because I don't have to press really hard to get the tape to set, and the tape is also very strong, so it holds it down nicely, gives a nice professional finish to the top of my cards. And then I'm going to use my Score Buddy, put my card base into the corner, and then just line it up and place my card front down. Doesn't that give a nice finish? Okay, so to attach this white frame, I'm using my Barely Art glue. Just a thin strip around. I love the fine tip on this glue. I use it for pretty much everything these days. Okay, so just a thin strip of glue all the way around, and then just eyeball, hopefully getting that more or less centered into my card front. Okay, stuck my finger into that glossy accents and it's dry, so now we can go back to finishing our stenciling. So again, I am bringing my card in here and I've got my magnets holding it in place. We are going back to stencil number 2. We're lining it up and we're going to add the color to these small flowers. Now the color is going to be the blue jay, and if I had not colored the centers first and covered them with the glossy accents, then the centers would be blue as well. So that's why I did this. Now I have no problem with going over because the glossy accents is going to resist the ink going through onto my white or my yellow centers. So just add a light coating of the blue, and then I went back over and I darkened just a few of them so that there was a little bit of a contrast. Adds a little bit of depth to your card, and use your cloth to remove any of the excess ink. And this will also pull the ink off of any of the flower centers that the ink might be sitting on top of. So that's a very cool way to get 2 colors on your card. So we're moving on from that, and we're now moving on to stencil number 3. And this is going to be putting the highlights into the large purple flowers. Now in this case, I found it easier to line up the small flower centers to get that stencil back on there. We're going to be using the same purple, the lavender, and by putting a second coat on this, we're going to make the highlights darker. Don't get too carried away with adding ink though, because it's hard to take it away. It's really easy to add more. So just do a light coat and then you can peel back the stencil and you can check and see how you're doing. Oops, my stencil moved. I didn't have it pushed down on my sticky mat enough. So just zipping through, adding a little bit more ink, and I'm not worrying about those flower centers because they're covered. Again, use my cloth to clean off my stencil, peel it back, and there's my beautiful detail on my purple flowers. Stencil number 4 is filling in the entire leaf for the backgrounds. So again, I'm just lining that up and then pushing it down so that it's held in place by my sticky mat and one of my magnets. And we're going to be using the aquamarine for this one. And again, I'm just going to do a light coat because I'm going to use the same color and do a darker coat over top. So just go gently with this color. It can get dark really quickly. And it is just a beautiful aquamarine kind of bluey green color. I think it looks really nice with the purple or the lavender. Okay. Just about finished. If you want to go a little bit darker, go to the bottom of the leaves, not the top. Helps you in your highlighting. And so here's the final, number 5. Again, lining up. These are the highlights for the leaves. Takes a minute to kind of figure out. Find some of the little tiny leaves. I found that was the easiest. Find the little white ones that I just pointed out there. It's the easiest way to do that. Again, adding the same ink, but this time, because it's going to be 2 layers, it's going to actually show up darker on our cards. So this cuts down on how many ink pads you need to use as well, and it ensures that your colors are coordinated. And that's one of the reasons why I like to do this. Let's make card making simple, right? Again, cleaning it up, putting the lid on my ink pad so I don't stick my hand in it. And now, look at that. Isn't that pretty? Beautiful way to add color. Now there's a coordinating die, so I'm just going to pop that in there and run it through my machine. And I'm getting some foam squares onto the back of this, peeling off the little covers and adding this down the left side of my card. I pre-foiled all of my sentiments onto white cardstock, and they're foiled in gold. There's a couple missing because I've used them on the cards that I did before I did my video. Again, this is the set that I'm using. Fancy script words, and I love that there's coordinating dies. And some of them are a little bit large, which is great depending on what kind of a card you're making. I want a smaller one, so I decided on Hello. And because I have my flowers popped up with foam squares, I only need to add foam to the right-hand side of my sentiment and just a little bit of glue to the left side. That way it will lay flat on my card. So just adding a little bit of glue, I'm going to pop this over and set it right in the bottom right-hand corner. Now we're ready to embellish. Isn't that pretty? Okay, I'm bringing in my Essentials Jewel Mix. I love these things. There's so many pretty colors in here. And there happens to be one that matches my background perfectly, so I just glued a few of those in place. Beautiful, pretty, easy card to make. It looks like it took hours, but it really didn't. And here's another one for you. I did a second card in pinks and greens just to show you a different variation, and obviously I did the image twice. And the colors that I used were Marigold, Bubblegum, Evergreen, Grassy Knoll, and then I went back in with Sweet Mustard, and that was for the flower centers on the small yellow flowers in the background. And so for the pink flowers, the large number 1 stencil, I did Bubblegum, and then number 3, I used that color again to put the highlights in. And then I did Grassy Knoll on the leaves first, and then the Evergreen over top. For the background, I gold foiled onto pink cardstock, and I'm showing you here that white would also look nice behind this as well, but I decided on the pink because I wanted my sentiment to pop because it's done on the white. And again, in the jewel mixes, there's also a pretty pink that goes just beautifully with this selection of pinks and greens together. So there you go, a couple of different layouts using the Pinkfresh Studio's Cosmos bundle. I love these bundles and the options they provide. I can color the flowers, I can paint them, or I can stencil them. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have linked the supplies I used below this video, and there's also a link over to my blog where you can download the PDF too. I hope you'll also give me a thumbs up and share my video with your friends too. Until next time, toodles!